Good afternoon, guys, and welcome back from the Thanksgiving holidays. I've got a special guest for you today, Nick Jain, coming out of Philadelphia, and he is a leading expert on how to make innovation happen. He is the CEO of IdeaScale, which we're going to find out all about what that is. And background, he's got a finance from Wall Street. He's got a Harvard MBA. He's done amazing things. He got a great story, and I'm really happy to have him on the show to spread to the audience. So, Nick, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Lou. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, we go on by first name, and everybody calls me Chris. And
Coincidence.
yeah, just talk about. I know you got a very rags to riches story, and then you went all the way to your top of your class at Harvard Business School, and then investment banking. So, talk about that journey and what you're doing now.
Sure. So I divide my career into three chunks. One is the academic chunk. I was a math physics guy, almost went the PhD route. Most of my friends are professors somewhere. The second portion was on Wall Street. I was a professional investor in private equity and hedge funds. So I was doing multi-billion-dollar deals, investing either in parts of companies or buying companies whole. And then for the last 5 or 6 years, I have become a professional CEO. So I have either led or co-led 3 different companies, a $100 million revenue trucking company, a small $2 million men's shoe startup, and now IdeaScale, which is the largest innovation software company on the planet.
Yeah, really fascinating. And so I love this idea. And so talk about what IdeaScale is and its genesis and what it does.
Sure. So if you think about like almost any company, and many of your audience is doctors, so think about Epic, something that a lot of doctors use. The software system helps keep track of all those records, right? The reason Epic exists is because doctors need a software system to do something. The problem that we solve is almost any company needs a way to collect ideas and figure out what ideas are good or bad. And those could be ideas for new inventions, new ideas for snacks in the fridge, and new ideas for what the holiday party theme should be, right? There's all these ideas that large organizations have. How do they get them when they have thousands of people spread out across the world? And then once they get all those ideas, how do they figure out which ideas are good versus bad? So that's what we do. IdeaScale has been around about 15 years now. And we are a software system that allows any company or any organization to collect all of those ideas, figure out which ideas are good and bad. Our customers or clients include major organizations like Pfizer, which many in the medical field probably know or hopefully know, Comcast, which provides my home internet, US government agencies like the Coast Guard, hospital systems, you name it. If they are looking to innovate and collect and organize ideas, we're typically the first call they make.
Yeah. Really fascinating. And what was the genesis behind this? Talk about this pain point that IdeaScale addresses.
Sure. So the original genesis, and I'm not I want to be transparent. I'm not the founder. We're these two guys, Rob and Viv, who are still actively involved in the business. So when President Obama was in the office, he came to office and said, hey, government is not super innovative. Let's make government more technologically innovative. That's where the Affordable Care Act, data.gov, other sort of government innovation initiatives came out. And when that came out, there was this big push for let's make government more transparent and make government better. And that's what we were founded on. We initially were founded to help large government agencies who were super complex, super bureaucratic, didn't have a way to figure out how to make government better, to collect all the ideas to make government better. And then we realized over sometime over the last 15 years that, hey, this is a problem that everybody faces, whether it be universities, nonprofits, private sector corporations. So the pain point we solve is like, how do you get all the ideas that are in people's heads in front of the CEO? And that's really hard unless you happen to be sitting in the room with the CEO. If you're a janitor on the other side of the country, or you're part of a large hospital system and you're a doctor in a specialty, how do you make sure the head of your division, the head of your hospital, the CEO of your hospital system gets those ideas?
I love that. Which brings me to this question is a lot of startups. I spent the summer in Silicon Valley, and all these startups, they have no struggles with innovation. They've got all these ideas like you do. And so why did like big organizations, I just heard the Intel CEO resign, and government struggles with innovation? Why and how can they overcome these challenges?
Sure. I think there's two things that are very different from the startups versus big organizations. Number one is when you're a startup, you're hungry. If you don't do something cool and new, you're gone, right? If you are a billion-dollar company or a huge hospital system or a government agency, you can screw up for a long time and not do creative stuff because you have a lot of money to sit there. There's not that hunger or drive. That's number one. That's small startups tend to have this hunger and drive that larger organizations lose as they grow bigger and more successful. The second is bureaucracy, right? If you are 10 people in a room together, it doesn't matter what sort of funny accents you have, doesn't matter what languages you speak. You can all bat around ideas. You can write it on a napkin or whiteboard. That's super easy if you're 10 people in the same room. Now scale that up to 1,000 people located in different cities, speaking different languages, having different backgrounds or ways of communicating. It becomes a lot harder for those good ideas to get from somebody sitting in, let's say, the office in Tokyo in front of the CEO who's sitting in London, passing through the finance department in New York. That's hard. That's the problem we solve. And that's why large organizations struggle to innovate because, look, no matter how smart the CEO is, he or she is not going to be the smarter than everyone else combined. I run a company with people in 8 countries, about 100 people in 8 countries. I'm pretty smart, but am I smarter than all the collective ideas of all of my people in every single area of expertise they have? Absolutely not. It would be presumptuous of me to assume so.
Yeah. Yeah, really interesting. One of my good friends from college, he has this idea of meritocracy, and he was like, the best idea is he's going to minimize bureaucracy. He's going to minimize all of this just corporate nonsense, and he's going to implement this, the best ideas win. And so explain this concept and its role in fostering innovation.
Sure, that's exactly the outcome of what we try and help organizations achieve, both from a cultural and tech perspective. So imagine this, right? In most organizations, whose voice matters. It's basically 2 types of people. Number one, whoever's the most senior, right? If you're the CEO or the CEO's buddies, whoever sits in that boardroom or that exec corner office. Or number 2, whoever's loud, somebody who is super popular, extroverted, able to shout out loudest. Okay, those are the ideas that win. And those aren't always the smartest ideas, right? The CEO could be great as an organizer, but may not be the most brilliant person in the room. And the loudest person may just be loud with dumb ideas, right? Quiet people are smart too. So the idea of meritocracy is, look, let's separate the individual who's saying things from what they are saying, right? So if somebody with a funny accent who doesn't speak great English and is junior on the organization or on the org chart has a great idea, that idea should matter more than like what his or her title is. So in your field, if the intern has developed a great surgery, he or she does not need to be head of thoracic surgery for their for their new device to be patented, implemented, and put around the hospital system. That should matter, not the fact that they are an intern from 1 year into their medical career.
Yeah. And that's really one reason, because you were talking about this, like large organizations, because you have senior and then you have very extroverted and very verbose people, and squashing, everybody's playing these kind of
And to be clear, they're not trying to squash ideas. It's just when you're senior, people listen to you more. When you're loud, people listen to you more. We're biologically programmed to have hierarchies and to, listen for verbal signals. It's what happens, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I love this idea. So given these we understand large organizations and we have this idea of meritocracy, what steps can companies, if someone on the podcast is listening or they have a practice, what steps can they take to build and sustain an innovative culture, especially like in healthcare or law, or very established traditional industries?
Yeah, I'd say there's 3 things to do. And I was just speaking with the chief innovation officer, one of the biggest hospital systems in the country, a couple of weeks ago, just before Thanksgiving. And he and I were chatting back and forth. And there were 3 things we came up with, and they're generic, but they also apply to healthcare. Number 1 is you need people who actually want to innovate. And which is okay. Not everyone wants to come up with new ideas. Some people want to work 9 to 5, or in your field, it may be from 2 in the morning till 2 at night, whatever the crazy hours are the people medical field work. But number 1, you need some critical mass of people who want to innovate. And roughly that number ends up being you need about 10%. You need at least 10% of the people in your organization who want to come up with new ideas, who want to do new things. You still do need that 90% who are showing up and doing a great job at whatever they're doing, but you need 10% coming up with new things. Number 2, you need to create incentives rather than disincentives to innovate. So a lot of organizations, when you come up with something new, they say, no, shut up, go do your job, right? So they slap you when you come up with something new. And if you try something new and you fail, which most things do, by the way, they penalize you. You get demoted, you get laughed at, you get passed over promotions, whatever it is. Instead, organizations that innovate reward people for trying new things and for succeeding. So you actually need to create a positive incentive structure so people are rewarded and not penalized for innovating. And thirdly, you need to give them the right tools and technologies, right? And the analogy to the medical field is, imagine you hired the most brilliant scientists or doctors, and you say, hey, we're going to pay you $1 billion to come up with this new drug, but then you put them in a dark room by themselves. They have no laboratory equipment. They have no access to the internet. That would be crazy, right? You have to give them the resources. Once you get the right people and the right incentives, you give them the right resource, the right technologies to innovate.
Yeah, I love that. It reminds me of Google, Amazon, they spend
It was
time.
20% time at Google. They did for the first like 10 years of their company.
Yeah, which is really interesting. I'm curious because you have a background from Wall Street and also in finance. And so kind of these finance is like where the big money is, but you still have kind of the old legacy, but you have new incumbents. So what did you learn from your time at Harvard and on Wall Street, and what lessons are you taking to apply in IdeaScale?
Sure. I think Wall Street, I took away probably two or three really things from my experience in Wall Street. Number one is understanding how businesses work. Okay. There's a lot of businesses that may be great ideas, but are bad businesses. And conversely, there may be great businesses that are bad ideas. For a business to work, it needs to make money. And there's a lot of assumptions about how businesses make money and capital compound that we can get into later in on this episode. But number one is how do businesses work? Why are some businesses good and some businesses bad? Number two is understanding the portions of a business, right? A good business, whether you're a hospital chain, a legal practice, or a manufacturing company, you need some HR, you need some finance, you need some people doing real work, you need some management, and those are all important functions that are needed. And then number three is getting exposure very early in my career, very intelligent, very accomplished people. So at the age of 22, I had the opportunity to be in the room with kind of the CEOs of billion-dollar companies. I wasn't saying very much, but I was absorbing and learning through osmosis. And that's just such an incredible opportunity to have. And those are obviously skills that now 10, 15, 20 years later, I can apply when I have the good fortune of leading a company. IdeaScale, one of the implications for IdeaScale that I like to brag about is the last 2 or 3 years have been very difficult for a lot of technology companies. We've had billion-dollar companies that have gone to zero. We've had startups shut down. We've had the Googles and Facebooks lay off large amounts of people. IdeaScale actually grew its headcount over the last 2 or 3 years. And that's because we were very prudently managed as a well-running financial organization, which means that our people we hire people rather than fire people. We've given people stable employment when a lot of other people in the technology industry have not been that fortunate.
Yeah. Talk about you talked about these lessons that you learned, which I really like. How about like leadership and talking about stakeholder balancing, creating win outcomes? What did you learn from your time there that you're implementing at IdeaScale?
Sure. So as a private sector business, I have three core constituents, and I'll try and draw the analogy to the medical field in a second. My three core constituents are my customers, right? The folks paying us to make sure we have a business. Number two, my employees, the people actually doing all the work to make sure we have a product and services. And number three, my investors or my investor singular, who's put a lot of his money at risk in order to build this business over the last 15 years. So for my customers, I need to deliver a high quality product that keeps getting better, right? For my employees, I need to give them a good employment, career trajectory, pay them on time, all this basic stuff, keep them excited and motivated. And it's not just about money, it's the soft stuff as well. And then on the investor side, I need to make sure that I'm growing his wealth over time, or their wealth over time. For the medical field, you obviously add a fourth constituent where you may have a customer who is different from your patient, depending on how insurance works exactly, which I know is a super complicated separate field. But the cool thing that's really relevant for my business, again, is I have to keep all three of those groups happy, right? If my customers, employees, or shareholders are not happy, it's bad for everyone, right? I need to make profits. But in order to make profits, I need to pay my employees, but then I need to pay them to make a better product so that if my customers are happy and it becomes a virtuous cycle. That's really important in almost any institution, right? Whether you be a manufacturing company, a software company, a hospital organization, because if any group of your constituents is not happy or not satisfied over the long run, you don't have a sustainable business or organization.
The other question I have, because we talk about scalability and those are the buzzwords these days, what are key challenges in growing software companies scaling them profitably, and how can they be addressed?
Sure. I'd say there's probably two or three challenges. Number one is software companies, young software companies, we're probably a little bit past the stage because we're not a startup anymore. We're a global mid-sized organization. But smaller companies tend to have a problem that they tend to have one or two superstars, the founders who had this great idea, they work their butts off, and they drive the company through that first phase of success. At some point, no matter how brilliant the founder or founders are, or key, or it doesn't even have to be founders, that key first hire or whatever, at some point, no matter how talented they are overextended, right? I run a company that's 100 people, no matter how, even if I was the most brilliant person on earth, I can't manage a 100-person organization single-handedly and do everything, right? There's coding going on, there's marketing going on, there's sales going on. So that's problem number one. You have to move away from relying on individually extraordinary people and instead create processes or systems that are scalable. So individuals aren't scalable, processes are. That's number one. Number two is balance. You have to not lose your hunger, but B, also not get arrogant in your success. So many organizations, once they succeed, they're like, we're amazing because we can build software, we can also build cars, or we can also go cure cancer. No, IdeaScale is an extraordinarily good company at making innovation software. That does not mean we are qualified to go build cars or to go do medical innovations. You have to be very careful with that. And so many organizations lose sense of their purpose or what they are good at and try and begin to believe they can do everything for everyone. That is arrogance at its arrogance of success.
Yeah, I love that. How is IdeaScale thinking about AI and positioning itself and thinking about AI so that it stays relevant and viable in the next 10 years?
Sure. So I think AI has obviously been huge in every facet of our life over the last 18 months or 2 years or so. But I want to be careful. Like AI does not do everything yet. It may in 5 or 10 years as we hit artificial general intelligence. And every software company has been bragging about how they use AI in X, Y, or Z. And I think a lot of that is just marketing overdone. At IdeaScale, we've incorporated AI in three ways. Number one, internally for how we run the company. It helps us write stuff, double check stuff, do math. That's internal operations. It doesn't really affect the customer directly. From a customer perspective, I think we've incorporated in two ways. Number one is it helps you express your ideas more eloquently. So let's imagine you have got a great idea, but you're not a great writer. And a lot of people, turns out, when they know they're not great writers and they get stage fright, they don't even write their ideas down or share them because they know they're going to sound stupid, even though they have a great idea. So that's number one. It helps you reframe, reposition, rewrite your ideas in a more effective way so they are more intelligible and more impressive, just adding some polish to whatever's already in your human brain. The second thing, which is actually coming out in about a month or two now, hopefully in mid-January, is we've added a really cool AI analytics or AI-powered analytics platform. And what it does is it solves a really fundamental problem that analytics has always had, right? It's very easy to add numbers or do graphs or charts when you are dealing with numerical data, right? Think of it like a blood pressure chart. It's very easy to go up and down. You have some numbers, okay? But let's imagine I asked you a more qualitative question, like what is a patient's health? Or what is in my world, what is the health of the innovation program of your organization? How rich are your ideas? Those are not numerical piece of data that you can draw on a graph or chart or add, subtract, multiply. None of the high school or even college math works. So what our AI analytics platform does, it takes all this qualitative data, stuff that can't be added and subtracted, and interprets it. So you can be the CEO of an organization or the managing director or the head of thoracic surgery or whatever, and say, hey, how rich are the ideas? How diverse are the ideas? Tell me what the most interesting ideas are. Tell me what the most unique ideas are. And the term unique has a very special human meaning that up until really recently could not be interpreted by a computer, but our AI analytics platform takes these very special words that have meanings to human beings and historically didn't mean anything for computers, and now can incorporate that or can interpret your innovations through those lenses.
Interesting. And so backing off this question, the future trends in innovation, what do you see as the next big trends in innovation, and how should businesses be preparing for them?
Sure. I think three things are happening. Number one is innovation is becoming formalized as a discipline. So once upon a time, innovation was thought about that Archimedes moment, like a lone genius in a bathtub has a bright light bulb idea. That's the way we see it in cartoons. Innovation is going from that, relying on the sole genius, to being a process. There's a right way to do it. There's a right kind of culture. There's right systems. There's right ways to induce creativity at an organization level. So formalization of the discipline, that's number one. And that requires certain processes, certain technology. There was actually an ISO standard issued about 2 months ago, the International Standards Organization Standard 56001, I think. So innovation literally has its own standard, the same way a USB cord does or a sphygmomanometer does. Trying to drop in some medical words there for you guys. Can't pronounce that. But number two is that innovation is along with almost anything, is becoming much more co-piloted field with machines and AI, right? So historically, again, everything was human. Intelligence was a very special providence of human beings, and now intelligence and creativity is being co-piloted in the same way that you're getting AI-supported drivers or AI-supported software engineers. Now AI creativity or innovation is also being AI co-piloted. And then the third thing that's happening is innovation is being recognized as a core competence, which some organizations have versus not. Earlier on this interview, you referred to Intel CEO resigning. What's really funny is Intel has obviously been at the forefront of semiconductor innovation for 40 years. Intel Inside was something we all grew up with. But here's the crazy thing. Intel actually spends more on R&D than NVIDIA or TSMC, the two companies that have overtaken it. Way more. So Intel spent more money and yet somehow was less innovative. And that's because innovation wasn't a core, stopped being at some point over the last 20, 25 years, a core competency. Even though they spent twice or thrice as much bill, they spent like $10 billion on R&D, some insane amount. And yet they were less innovative. So innovation is being distinct from your budgets. And the fact that it is a core measurable and something that some organizations do well versus not, means that there's a greater emphasis on organizations adopting it as something they're actually good at, no different than being financially prudent or good at marketing or good at patient outcomes.
Interesting. How can people find out more about you, connect with you, and find out the amazing work you're doing at IdeaScale?
Sure. I think the two best ways are our website, IdeaScale.com. You can see the spelling of IdeaScale behind me, pretty simple English. The awesome thing, by the way, our software is completely free for teams or organizations less than 100 people. So if you're a 10-person physician's practice or a 99-person law firm, completely free. Actually, you can be a 100-person team at a billion-dollar hospital chain, completely free. So encourage people to check it out. To get in touch with me personally, best ways through LinkedIn. My name is Nick Jain. It's at the bottom of the screen there. I respond to 100% of messages. Look forward to hearing from your audience.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation, and I love your energy and passion, and keep up the great work.
Thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate the honor of being on your show today.